so it's 5 o'clock, so I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order on Monday, June 8th. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into new business. Under new business, we do have the outdoor dining approval process. I believe that we have our team that's been working on this for all of, 2 days? We got notice on Saturday, but at least we had a little bit of a heads up that we would be hearing something from the governor. Hold on one moment, there's somebody else who's called in that I just need to identify. Hello there, I have an area code 860 that just called in. Can you please tell me who I'm talking to?
Sean Boyne.
I'm sorry?
Sean Boyne.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Nope, that's okay. Just wanted to be able to identify you for the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sean Coyne? Okay, thank you. Okay. So Mark, Jerry, Deb have been working on an outdoor dining approval form that is in front of us. Legal counsel did review it over the weekend. There were some changes made to it this afternoon. And they have been working on what that process would look like. This is in order to streamline the process for our restaurants to be open. As we all know, they've been shut down for about 3 months. At this point, we'd like to have them open. Today was the opening of phase 2, and they all thought they could certainly be open outside, but we'd like to put a process forward. I don't know who is the speaking person for this team. Who's put this together? Mark is going to? Okay. Mark, I'm going to ask you to do the best with your outdoor voice. Yep, you can come to the podium. The closest speaker to you is there. If you'd prefer, you can probably even come closer to the speakerphone, but no, that microphone, all the microphones are attached to the camera for community television, unfortunately. So we're dealing with the speaker system. So I apologize there's not a podium for you, but this is probably the best place to stand so that those who are on the phone can hear what you have to say.
Okay.
Okay? So
we put together this form, which will have several attachments to the applicant. Mm-hmm. And this form was based on guidance, policy guidance from DPH, Governor's Office, DPH, and the ABCC. So it asks for a plan, a diagram from the establishment as far as what their outside seating will look like. It's going to include measurements, which are important for several factors. One, capacity. Two, any impediments to public way, whether or not their outside seating will be on the public way. If it is on the public way, they're going to have an insurance rider indemnifying the town. It also, as I mentioned, incorporates aspects of requirements from ABCC. So there are some already licensing requirements whether or not it's going to be serving outside alcoholic beverages. And with that, there also has to be that seating area cordoned off. So, does anybody have any questions on the application itself?
So I'll clarify a little bit. When the governor issued his order on Saturday, normally he had streamlined the process to allow for outdoor seating. Normally, an outdoor seating request for a restaurant is usually handled through the zoning office. And a town will have a bylaw in place that permits outdoor seating. We are not so equipped in the town of Athens. The legislature and governor's office knew this, and the order specifically exempts through November 1st such process. So it has already been streamlined at the state level. So the reason why we're having this conversation this evening is simply because the executive order states that a city chief executive officer or town chief executive officer, which in our case is the Board of Selectmen, has to just approve a simplified process to allow table seating outside. Mark and the team have done. The secondary issue, so the form that you have in front of you is only for the table outdoor seating, separate of alcohol, but you'll see there's a checkbox on there for alcohol. There's a secondary process that an establishment has to go through to allow alcohol sales on premise at an outdoor seating area.
If they're not already licensed.
If they're not already licensed. So it's kind of really a two-step, process, as we go. So that's why, that's the context of what I should have done that to begin with, I apologize, sorry. I'm usually a guy that's the big picture.
You are. Well, if any board member has any questions about the application form or the process, I will be happy to answer whatever.
Process essentially is going to be, a restaurant will contact the town, contact inspectional services. Jerry and Mark will go out, they'll look at what the desired premise is, they'll look at, the details that the restaurant business owner pitch, to Mark and Jerry. They'll look at it through a safety lens, they'll look at it through ADA compliance lens, they'll look at it also through the sanitation lens. So Mark and Jerry will look at it through their two respective code enforcement areas that they look at, and then make the recommendation back to approve or not, essentially approve it right then and there. It's the most streamlined fashion, process that as a community we can come up with in order to achieve the usual balance. Allow the business to do what they want from a business model, and at the standpoint, what's our concerns from a safety, standpoint. Town council's reviewed it, Ed, on the phone, if there's any questions there, he's also looked at it from his lens, as well.
And Deb has kindly gotten everything kind of ready to go after this meeting to send out the form, if it is approved and the process is approved by the Board of Selectmen, to contact the restaurants as early as this evening and get this in their hands so that they can start that process as early as tomorrow morning. I expect Mark and Jerry will have a very busy paperwork and maybe phone call day tomorrow, and appreciate that you guys are ready for that, as you've been talking about this for a couple of days now.
Right, and so, step one of phase 2 began today. So there are restaurants ready.
Oh, yes.
To play their outside dining.
They are there.
And also to further streamline it, you'll see that on page 2 of the application form, we have different agencies, so include DPW, police chief, fire chief, and then, what we'd be asking is not for the individual venues to come before the board for approval, for final approval, but rather, one individual charged with the sign off for the board, and we just propose that we
What is the turnaround time, estimated turnaround time? I know we haven't done this, it's brand new. So this comes into, the town, it goes down to the inspection services office, and you guys are out that day, or is that?
It could potentially be, it more than likely will be out that day, and then, our approvals, at the end of that day, and then, the Jay's office will sign off for issuance the next day.
Who ensures after the building commissioner signs off that the fire chief, police chief, DPW director, and town administrator sign off on this? Is it gonna be you, Deb? You're gonna make sure that all the other signatures?
Right, in and out through the.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Clarification, I don't know if I misheard. You said somebody that does not have an alcohol license cannot get one for outdoor dining with this?
Go ahead. No. Those who already have their alcohol license in place, who does not have the permission for outside service of alcohol. So those are ones who need to contact us for that approval with you.
I thought I might have misheard, so that's fine.
The approval actually goes through the local licensing authority and does not, we just need to notify the ABCC. We do not have to wait for their approval for the amendment. I just want to clarify. So
Yes.
that's handled at the local level, so we would be taking in the amendments that would be submitted by some of our establishments, and then we can act on them quicker, as long as all the paperwork is in.
It's as streamlined as it possibly can. So this form deals only with temporary outdoor dining, which is essentially a municipal decision. And then if an establishment says, I already have a liquor license, on-premise consumption, I'd like to expand that to my outdoor area, they have to file an amendment consistent with the ABCC form. And that is left to the local licensing authority to decide, as long as it hits certain tenets of the outdoor premise, the same regulations as if you would come and do it, for full-time license. That's it. And then we simply give notice to ABCC, hey, we did this. It's about as streamlined as it possibly can get from here. So they still receive notice, but as you know, all of you know, normally they have to apply, it gets reviewed, it gets sent to ABCC, and then it takes time to come back. In this situation, all of that is left to the municipality to do. So the last step to this is essentially what process the local licensing authority wants to put people through. There still has to be some level of process.
And this has an expiration date of November 1st.
Correct, and it ends on November 1st, and then in the spring, if they try to put tables and chairs out, that's not gonna happen.
Right.
So this ends November 1st. I just wanna make that clear, that's all.
I didn't mean to jump on that.
Well,
Sorry,
that's
Jerry.
something that the community wants, but it has to be a zoning amendment.
Right.
Which gives us time to put together a zoning bylaw that then would have to be approved by town meeting and blah, 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 blah. Yes, go ahead, Joe, Jim, sorry.
This is kind of putting some of the restaurants, usually out a little bit. I mean, we do have a number of restaurants in town where you can have outdoor seating. We also have a lot of restaurants in town where you cannot have outdoor seating. It's kind of favoring somebody, I mean, it's certain advantage they have the property, yes. But I think we should be looking at ways of letting some of the smaller restaurants that are open at night have somewhere to do have outdoor seating, like the Daily Grind. They own no property,
Right.
but they have Army Corps there. Are we gonna allow them to use Army Corps?
I'll let Jerry speak to that.
They already have a variance for that.
They do.
They got that back in 2004.
Yep.
They can already utilize Armory Court. And so did the adjacent business that was there, before, but is no longer there. They also could use Armory Court for outside seating.
People can use parking lots. That's what this process is designed for. I may own a restaurant, and I may have nothing except a paid parking lot. But I fill out this form, I meet with Mark and Jerry, they assess it, and as long as it meets basic, safety standards and other, they could very well use a parking lot. It's a case-by-case assessment, but the first step is for the business owner to apply for this. If a business already has outdoor dining, they're serving tonight.
So like the pizza house, if you use their table on their parking lot.
Correct.
Once Mark and Jerry go over and these individuals on this sheet, anyone that's got some vested interest in reviewing it from the town's perspective, signs off on it, that's what this is
And what I
about.
will say for Mark and Jerry is they've been thinking through all of the different properties in town and all the different restaurants so that they can start, with some creativity for those who are in that same situation you're talking about, Jim.
I mean, we just got into this paperwork tonight, so we don't know that's why I'm questioning.
Yeah, no.
Because, no, I just don't want to be showing favoritism to restaurants that have the
No.
property. And I'm not denying them the fact that they utilize it, because I think they really should be able to.
Mm-hmm.
But we should be, like the corner of Muncie, for instance, I don't know what they're going to.
They have a lot on the other
They have a
side
lot.
of the building.
It's still up to the private sector to say, I'd like to take advantage of this through November 1st. Or they may say, not for me, too logistically complicated.
Well, I understand that, but I'm just saying, I just don't want to see favoritism going out there from the board saying, hey, you guys have property,
That's not.
And I don't take it the wrong way, I'm probably saying it in the wrong way.
We get your.
But, I want to make sure everybody's being entitled that owns a restaurant is going to be able to have outdoor seating, not just a certain few that own the property.
But some businesses are not going to open for that because it's not profitable for them.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly, I'm sure a lot of them are going to.
And to buy the inventory is gonna be costly, and they don't know what they're gonna get for a customer base, so.
I mean, they
Some
got like
places may not take advantage of this at all.
And some restaurants may not be able to, even though they want to, they may not be able to offer outdoor seating because simply of the logistics of their property. You know, it may not, in Jerry and Mark's estimate, it may not be possible to safely authorize them to do it.
I mean, we have one restaurant in town right now that's serving breakfast. My house, I don't think there's any go.
Serving breakfast, well, that in itself is not a code violation or a violation of
To go,
Takeout.
to go.
to go.
I'm just saying, if they had the outdoor seating, they could have people sitting outside eating breakfast. It's kind of tough to get bacon and eggs to go. You know,
And again, they can do the outdoor seating, they're just gonna have to figure out a way of doing that safely and keep, like if they're on the sidewalk, you're gonna have to have accessibility through there for patrons, for pedestrians, and for wheelchair accessibility. So you have to have all that in order to satisfy what we need.
Can you guys actually go through what you would respectively be looking at when you visit a property?
Sure, but before saying that, this topic has been in the media, and last week, we sent out notifications to all of our permitted establishments, informing them what was coming down the road, what we had hoped to put into play starting tonight for action starting tomorrow. So on that, you can explain.
So one of the things that we definitely have to look at is accessibility to the business, because if you're gonna be eating and drinking, you have to have a restroom available. So if you have a business currently that is not accessible, and you have the ability to put a accessible porta potty in, you can utilize this till November 1st to grab up that business and use the porta potty. But come November 1st, they just go right back to where they were before. It's not an accessible business. They are not required to upgrade anything. They can go back there, but of course, there's no accessibility into the business. So right now, they can grab up that kind of business. So it's gonna allow them to open and make some money. If they already have an accessible entry and restroom, then that's fine. They just do things the way they normally do it with the outside seating, and they just use the facility inside. Of course, they're gonna have to maintain that facility inside, keep it clean, but, that's gonna help them do what they have to do there. If they're gonna be on the sidewalks, we're gonna have to make sure that when they set their tables and chairs up, they have proper distancing. They can't overload the sidewalk with tables and chairs. Also, the tables and chairs, they're gonna have to bring these in at night if they're not weighted. So if they're not, heavy enough to bring in, stay there themselves, they're gonna have to bring them in, because that could be a safety hazard, and plus the wind could take it down the street and all end up in the common. So we need to make sure that they take them in at night, and do some safety checks. But they're gonna have to have 3 feet clearance on the sidewalk. That doesn't mean they go up into the bricks and the grass and everything else. It has to be the sidewalk, a smooth surface, hard surface, so that the wheelchair can get through, or pedestrian traffic can get through. So they're gonna have to use a little thought on how they set this up. If they have a liquor license, they're gonna have to put up barriers. The ABCC requires barriers 6 feet from the edge of a table. So they're gonna have to put up a rope barrier or something around those tables, 6 feet from the tables, so that they can do that. Some places are not gonna be able to do that. So it's gonna take a little thought and a little initiative on the applicant's part to figure out how they're gonna do this and satisfy everything they need to do. We're not gonna be unreasonable, but we have to maintain safety.
There's 7 points that the ABCC requires for guidelines for extension of premises, patio, and outdoor areas. This has been in place since 2015. It's what's required in the normal course. The ABCC has reaffirmed their guidance. These still have to be met, even for the temporary extension until November.
And most of those are easy to get to, but they still have to do that.
An initial disapproval does not mean an approval cannot happen subsequently when they make whatever modifications need to be made to their plan.
Just a point of order, you're standing too close to one another. We're supposed to be 6 feet away, and you're right near each other. And you're the guys who are gonna be overseeing this, that the distances are proper, so.
Right, and so if you look at the restaurant regulations, from the state, you're going want to have people who are actually closer to one another, okay? So you're gonna have people who have frequent engagement with one another, people who live within the same household,
Their offices.
eating at the same table within, close distance in this.
Because considering we have no lines whatsoever, I don't think it's gonna be a problem that we're standing together.
And they've spent every waking moment with each other since March, yeah.
Right.
I've heard about it. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, yeah, and then I do have a question from, the chair of the Board of Health. Go ahead, Deb.
Okay, one quick, consideration that I'm asking, that I am asking from the board is that these establishments that have been closed down for so long have not had the, ability to take in money. So I'm asking for consideration from the board to think about whether we can waive the fees for the amendment, because for alcohol establishments, it's $100, and right now, these businesses have not.
Thank you, Deb, for bringing that up. Are there other questions from the, Board of Selectmen before I call on, Mr. Rhodes, or Dr. Rhodes, who has his hand up?
Just the process for the, establishments that sell alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
What is our process going to be to approve that request so we can move it quickly?
So it would be an
Boards.
amendment that they could
Right.
file. If we receive some by the close of business tomorrow, I could put a special, Board of Selectmen meeting on the calendar for Thursday and approve those as early as Thursday. I think it's gonna be based upon when the paperwork comes in, as to how quickly we can post a meeting, but we still have to follow the 48-hour notice. So I'm hoping that anybody who would like to have an amendment, would do so tomorrow, or at least notify us that the paperwork is coming, and we would be able to do a special meeting on Thursday to address that. But that's probably the earliest we could do it. But it would help them for the weekend. Does that satisfy your question? Okay. Other questions? Dr. Rhodes, if you would like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, thank you so much. The application signature page here only goes down to DPW Director. I assume Board of Health Chair is still at the bottom of it?
So, this actually would just be, staff only. That's what is before the Board of Selectmen this evening, is to move this through inspectional services, so that it is a quicker process in removing boards at this point.
So
So
the
it would
form,
be code enforcement officer, building commissioner, fire chief, police chief, DPW director, and final sign off by the town administrator that all of these items have been satisfied.
so in other words, the Board of Health is out of the loop.
Correct, as is the Board of Selectmen, would not be part of this approval process. However, the agent that works with the Board of Health would be involved.
Right, and so basically a reporting, letting us know sort of, what's going on. I feel like we should at least have an understanding, an information flow. I assume the Board of Selectmen will be receiving information. And just want to make sure that the information flow was continuing for us also.
Certainly, so maybe by the end of the week, Mark or Jerry could send a communication to the Board of Health and to the Board of Selectmen as to the establishments that they have approved to move through the process, to move to outdoor dining. Would that satisfy what you're asking?
Yes, of course. That
It would be probably once a week, and not as establishments.
Yeah, I mean, as you're aware, my main concern is just information, because sometimes information doesn't flow smoothly. So I just want to make sure we are at least in the information loop. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep. Did you have other questions, David? I'm just seeing the chat. I'm having a hard time sharing my screen and navigating.
No, yeah, good. That's just wanted those 2 points of clarification. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, comments? So what needs to happen is the Board of Selectmen do need to approve the outdoor dining application and the process as it has been outlined this evening. And then there was the second item that Deb brought forward about the waiving of fees with regard to the amendment for the license, alcohol licenses, sorry.
I'll make a motion to approve the temporary outdoor dining application, which has been presented to us this evening, along with the processes that have been discussed.
I have a motion by John.
Second.
I'll go with Jim as the second. It was close, Joe. It was real close. Any further discussion or comment?
Yeah,
Yes, go ahead, Joe.
One of the gentlemen that was up here talked about an insurance rider. So how does that work? The insurance rider, what does a business have to come forward and, present to the board so that they're covered or we're covered?
That indemnifies the town of Adams if they're placing any kind of equipment onto the public way, they would have to indemnify the town.
Okay, so in other words, there was this 3-foot buffer so that wheelchairs can get by, and I think Jerry mentioned that, right? I look at our sidewalks and giving 3 feet for a table, you're gonna, lucky just to be able to have 2 people at a table, I would think. Is that a correct assumption?
It would be,
Well, that's their assumption?
yeah, well,
They're
depending
already-
upon their application and
Right.
diagram and us going out to the premises and confirming the measurement.
Yeah, and just one other thought, I don't know how this would work, if it would be okay, but the old Firehouse Cafe has 2 nice outside tables. I don't know, the legality of, asking the owner of this Bill Colas for a waiver to allow that, because it's very close to, the Daily Grind, although they have, variance or use of the Army Corps, so they may not want to use it anyways, but.
Well, those areas you have to be contiguous with the.
Okay, contiguous, okay, yes, okay, thank you.
I got a question.
Yes, go ahead. Good.
The, coffee liberation over here, I don't know if they have any place in the back for dining. I was just wondering, we do have the bike path off the street. Could they incorporate something like they have in Eagle Street, North Adams, where they block that section off, set tables up within that bike path, and you still have a sidewalk buffer? That's the only.
They're allowed to use lawns, so again, it would be dependent on the applicant's application, the diagram, the information that the supporting information that they send along with the application and our site visit.
The only, piece of that is that that part of the trail is going to be ripped up probably as soon as next week.
That's why I'm asking if they could use, that's the bike path.
Yeah.
On Park Street, you have a
Oh.
section where bikes ride down, where they marked it off the bicycles path on Park Street itself. Like in North Adams and Eagle Street, they have outdoor dining, but they're outside the curb would be like where the bike path is
You're
going
talking
out
about the
here.
pocket park,
Yes,
Yeah,
that little pocket thing that they have there,
parklets.
the park, right?
right. I mean, would it be possible to do something like that? Because their hands are gonna be tied. I don't know if they're gonna be open or not, and
Again,
For a few $1,000s.
we would make that determination after getting the application, reviewing the documents for that application, the diagram, the site plan, making a site visit, and then make that assessment at that time, rather than hypothesize about every establishment.
well, I'm not talking, that was just one establishment I'm thinking of that don't have it. But I'm saying make pockets, whatever they call, out in the street, your sidewalks are still available. So you're gonna be taking up maybe 3 parking spaces for your business.
If there was a way to make it happen safely and healthily, we would make it happen.
Gary, did you have something you wanted to add to this?
I think you pretty much.
Oh, okay. Okay. Are there other, questions from the Board of Selectmen? Because I do have a motion and a second on the table.
I'm sorry, should
Go
I
ahead.
amend this to, be valid through November 30th, my motion?
It would be November 1st.
First, I'm sorry, November 1st.
I don't think you need to, because it's actually on the application.
It's on the application.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
on page 2 under notes.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay. Any other questions or comments from the Board of Selectmen with the motion in a second? Hearing none, all in favor of the application and the process? Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
I'll make a motion, Madam Chairman, to waive the $100 fee for restaurants, looking for the, what was that form called? Amended, on alcohol, on sales of alcohol.
Okay. The amended alcohol sales fees. Yeah?
I'm with you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. For John and Rick. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor of waiving those fees? Aye. Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous. Okay. Thank you very much. Marcus, oh,
What would the appeals process be?
the appeals process.
So, in other words, Jeff, if they were, go ahead, Mark.
Okay,
I shouldn't even think you guys haven't thought this through.
go ahead. So, this also falls under the jurisdiction of food codes, so it's the same appeals process as is in 410-500.
Would that be expedited at all, or the same?
We would have to meet within 2 weeks, but Dr. Rhodes still on.
He's still, and he's asked the exact same question, so I'm gonna have you, answer the phone.
So,
Sorry.
if someone were to make the appeal,
Yep,
the request for an appeal, we would make notification to the board, and so long as he's, willing, or the board is willing to convene with a quorum within 2 days, it could be heard within 2 days.
So it goes to the Board of Health on appeal, no different than any other housing code. That's why the chairman of the Board of Health cannot sign off on the initial issuance of the permit, because they are the appellate authority, the first level appellate authority, to appeal a decision by the inspection services team or the health agency.
Okay, I understand that. And does the appeal have to go before the full board? Because I think that's what.
You would have to make.
it would have to be a quorum.
Okay, so that's not, because 127B says full board.
That's housing code.
Yeah.
That's housing code.
That's how, I thought that was Board of Health in general, chapter 111.
We're talking 590. Anyhow, it can go before the board within 2 days.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So if there's nothing else on the outdoor dining approval process, Mark and Jerry, you're free to stay or you're free to go, whatever you would like to do. Before we jump into the interim police chief search process, there was a request from the Board of Selectmen last Wednesday, just as part of the reopening, for just a brief kind of update on youth sports, and I think that's why Robert was in the room to talk about the park.
Both Robert and Mark are prepared.
Right, so I just wanted to if you could briefly just let us know maybe what's coming forward with that and what the Board of Selectmen just need to be mindful of. So if we need to schedule any meetings or put anything on any agendas for the next few weeks, or next couple days, or next week, that would be helpful. So if there's just any type of update before we jump into the other, so then I can let you two go as well. Trying to be mindful of people's schedules.
So basically just going off the memorandum that came out, this was dated June 4th, regarding the opening standards for playgrounds, play decks, outdoor fitness areas.
Yep.
And just to summarize on this, and again, this goes in line with what we've been seeing throughout, maintain minimum 6 feet from all persons. We need to post signage at the playground areas. It says parents, guardians, and other adults supervising children should monitor children at all times to ensure children maintain proper distancing and adherence to requirements for face coverings. Where possible, playgrounds and outdoor fitness area operators or staff, if available, which we don't, are encouraged to limit capacity to allow social distancing. If the facility is unstaffed, which is the case for most of our playgrounds, if not all, parents and our guardians will be required to seek alternative facilities. Again, we're using the honor system here. We're not going to be there to police, it's not our job. Children and adults who feel sick or are recovering from illness may not visit the playground. Again, this is the honor system. We don't know. We're not going to be able to police that. Also, as far as sanitation is concerned, playgrounds and outdoor fitness areas generally require normal routine cleaning. In this particular case, we do not require disinfection. And again, this is coming straight off this memorandum. So the DPW is stretched thin, so we will be doing our usual general cleaning at the beginning, but there is no requirement for disinfection. We'll be removing all the warning signs as far as the ones that are up there now for being closed, but we will be posting the traditional signs that we've been putting at some of the other areas, such as the bathrooms over at the Glen, you know, social distancing, things that they still need to keep in effect at this time. So
It's kind of a two-pronged approach. First prong is, what do the hard facilities look like? Playground equipment, skate park, those types of facilities. So that's what Robert has gone through. It's almost a use at your own risk scenario.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest factor of this is, as soon as we open the facility again, notwithstanding our requests for people to abide by these rules, we still risk allowing groups of more than 10 to assemble. And no matter which way you look at it, all of these rules and regulations are aspirational, frankly, because a community like ours is not equipped with staff to be able to enforce them. So that is a risk that the board is going to have to take into consideration when you may decide to say, okay, let's go ahead and reopen our facility. Because all we can really do is post a sign that says use at your own risk. In terms of the youth sports and amateur sports, Mark has a little bit more information on that. And I warn everybody right now, that too is going to be difficult to regulate. But there are very strict regulations and protocols coming from the state that ask these groups to abide by.
If Mark wants to come forward and Robert step back, or since you two don't share an office. But I also know that, Jay, you are having a meeting with all of your department heads tomorrow to to talk more about the reopening of municipal facilities, which would include parks and so forth.
Correct.
There will be more information that's coming forward, but this was just to give kind of an overview today about kind of where the state is and what you all will be looking at this week. So go ahead.
Informational.
Yep.
Right, and emphasis on this is not yet authorized within this step of phase 2.
It's the second step of phase 2 that we're, right? Part 2 of phase 2?
So I could throw a disclaimer out to you that date for step 2 of phase 2 has not yet been determined. Okay, so I'm not going to be filled out.
Gotcha.
Exactly on that.
So,
All right.
you sound like the governor now, Mark.
So we have two governor's orders in play here, one being 37, which addresses the phase 2 and the different steps of phase 2. We have the same, we're using the same June 4th document guidance from EEA, which also talks about athletic fields. Now, our playgrounds and our athletic fields, most are merged.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd be risky if you were to rescind your park's closure order to allow use of the playground. You can certainly modify that order, but you don't want to rescind it completely because you do have these precautions. So where it states that within that aspect of phase 2 where it would be allowed, you also have the small print that says municipalities can do their own thing, home rule, okay?
You also have the governor's COVID order, number 38, that states presently, and until the order changes, gatherings that bring together more than 10 persons into close physical proximity. Here I'm talking about the basketball usage, okay, or any other kind of close contact sport, okay? So it does mention in these three documents various risks you have of certain activities where you're going to be within that 6 feet confinement. So you also have organized children's activities where right now authorized being recreational camps, where they're allowing groups of 10 to be on a large open field that have to maintain 20 feet distance between the two groups, okay? So there's a lot of criteria that you'll have to assess before rescinding that park's closed order.
Thanks. Go ahead, Joe.
Because the governor ordered this, it's home rule, so the governor is putting this out as a guideline, but are we forced to reopen them in phase 2 now?
Not necessarily, because you always have, and it's mentioned here, okay, that athletic fields, courts, other playing surfaces in parks, reservations, or open space managed by municipalities or other organizations for public use is available at the discretion of the city or town. So we always have the authority to make our regulations stricter than the guidance provided by the state.
Yeah, can't be allowed. My reason for asking is, should we allow this to go forward? The use of the parks are by teenagers mainly, and, you know, they're not gonna do the social distancing, they're not gonna, you know, we can't have someone there telling people what to do, and we say that the basketball court's open. You're gonna have pickup games down there, and I don't think they're gonna understand, basically what they need to be, can and cannot do. So, my thought is, you know, this is just my thought, I would like to maybe keep them closed for another month or two to see, you know, how things, play out, because I don't really think that we're going to be able to be shepherds of those properties and, you know, be able to watch them and make sure that people are doing things according to the governor's rule.
So very true, Mrs. Noack. The police and I have had discussions with those very same youths, okay? And they're getting their source of information on masslot.com or some other media that isn't giving all the details. So, you know, you do have the governor's order that talks about the current governor's order, 38, that says gatherings are not subject, are subject to the limitations, such as sporting events and, list outdoor activities in unenclosed spaces, which this is. However, they did not read that every person in attendance is able to regularly maintain that 6-foot distance. And the type of gathering at issue is not prohibited by some outdoor space in which a gathering will take place, but anyway. So they're missing the contact and the closeness of the prohibition, so.
Jim, you have comments?
Yeah, like baseball, I'm saying 10 people. You got 9 people, 9 kids on a team, but the coach is 10. You know, that's not including your bench. 2 teams, you're up to over 20 people. I mean, how do you legally open this up if this is the case? You wait, I don't see how we can.
You wait for the appropriate phase when the governor and all the experts say,
So
yeah,
at the present time, that's not.
and so they're talking about the organized type of youth sports where they can start scrimmaging and whatnot. You're gonna have the cleaning of the equipment. You know, when we're talking about our skate parks, they use cameras and they have, you know, others hold my camera while I'm doing my thing out there. you know, so you're risking, exposure, and then, as former Chairman Hoyt of the Board of Health mentioned the last meeting, our stats have been pretty good, you know, and we don't want to see an increase in our COVID stats.
Running fuels back to that, play that. Park, skate parking in the basketball courts. I called the other day, told them they were down there, policeman down checking them out. And I went by today and it was packed again, but I had something to do where I couldn't make a phone call. And then, you guys only have to get, you know, I do so much too, I'm just saying.
That's the issue. It's a reactive, unfortunately, that's the balance that we find ourselves as a municipality. We're responsible for making decisions that benefit the health and safety and welfare of the community. And at the same time, we have recreational facilities that offer health and wellness. But we're in the middle of a health pandemic where large groups of people have the chance of passing that asymptomatic virus around. So do we open these facilities so that people can recreate after being cooped up for so long? But at the same time, there's an increase in risk. And usually when you do a risk model like this, you look at the risk factors, you know, and the behavior. And I was doing that exercise over the weekend, and not unlike Joe's comment now, I said I'm not 100% sure we're there yet to really open these. And then when you look at what these teams have to go through in order to just even have a practice, we're going to have to say to the teams, you're welcome to use the facility, but you have to meet these guidelines. And at 7:30 at night, who from town government who are we going to be able to say to go over there and ensure that they're doing that? There's a lot of that use at your own risk. Now, again, at the end of the day, as I said before, when the last time the mayor and I were on our cable television program, we said a lot of this reopening is self-accountability. So at some point, we're going to have to say, okay, we're opening this, but it's self-accountability. And these are the assessments that we struggle with each and every day. Every time the governor comes out with an order, every time we enter a new phase, we look from the municipal lens. What facilities do we have, and what can we do? What's the risk factor? Is it the right decision to make? And they're not. We struggle with it. This is a struggle. And that's why I asked Mark and Robert to kind of inform the board to say, hey, start thinking about this. This is what we're dealing with.
I agree with Joe, I think we should hold off, because you're gonna have 20, 30 kids out there, no matter what, when fall season starts. Not that, I don't want to seem denied it by any means. I mean, I think it's an important thing in kids' life, to play baseball, to play soccer, you know, be able to go to the playground. But it's also a real health risk. Do we really want to let that go on? I mean, you look at Florida, they open the beaches up, what's going on down there?
So,
COVID is on the rise.
So it is happening on a very small scale with children's recreational camps that we're allowed to open, okay? So I'm gonna guess that state officials are gonna weigh the data, and before taking action on implementing step 2 of phase 2.
So at the present time, nobody's allowed on the fields. Correct. I was sent a number of emails today and asked me that question, and I did not respond because I didn't know what the answer was.
So if I can clarify the town's order, for the park's closure, they can still use it for passive recreation.
The walk through, that.
They can jog, well, jogging is mentioned in the order, they can jog, they can walk, I would imagine they can throw a ball 20 feet apart.
To themselves, they can't share the equipment.
They can't be within close contact or engage in any kind of activity which would bring them within close contact.
I don't know how to answer the question today, and I just didn't know. And I wasn't about to put my foot in my mouth.
All right. Thank you, Mark, for the update. Appreciate that very much.
That will be an agenda item at the next meeting for discussion.
To open up the park, that actually falls underneath the town administrator because we're still under an emergency order. So I think he's taking in information from department heads, and the board can certainly, I mean, you've given your opinions this evening, but it's not necessarily an action item from us.
The emergency order doesn't give the town administrator any additional authority. The
The
governor gives additional authority, but if it's a board purview to approve or disapprove, it's still with the board. That doesn't change during a state of emergency.
The municipal buildings and facilities?
Whatever we
Have
have,
to-
whatever we have authority over, emergency is declared by the governor, right?
Mhm.
He pulled up some law that was a while back, or created, it was a new one, but the localities, there's no difference. The board still has the same authority.
Because we declared ours on March 13th,
Right, we still have
giving
the same,
that,
but that's not like, we didn't declare that, we gave the town administrator the authority to do anything. Different than what he's given in the town bylaws or the charter. Locally is different than the governor saying, you know, that's different authority. Locally, it's still, nothing changes for us unless we identify changes or differences. So if the authority to open up the parks, just for an example, I don't think it should be not. Once the board selected is prior to the state of emergency, the town council can jump in on this, for authority in the local municipalities.
I think our charter states that all falls under the town administrator.
It may, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I may have just, heard it wrong, but nothing changes.
Personally, from my point of view as a town administrator, these are such important decisions to make. I would not want to make them alone in the vacuum.
Right.
I would seek the board's input anyway, because at the end of the day, no matter what decision is made, you folks are going to likely be the ones that are going to receive the feedback. So I think it's best in a situation like this, that a prudent town administrator come forward and say, this is our recommendation. I can certainly do it under the charter, I read the charter enough, but I think that the town charter intends that to be under normal day-to-day functions. This is out of the box.
Yeah.
So I think it's best that we would come forward, the team would come forward and say, these are the issues and concerns, what's the consensus of the board, and then we would execute accordingly. That's how I think I would.
And you haven't made any of those decisions in a vacuum to date. You've sought counsel on a number of those items.
If I could just step in on it too, I think a decision like this is something that falls in the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen to make ultimately.
Because I think day to day, yes, that is the town administrator's purview, but to close all parts of the community or to reopen them, that is a board of selectmen, in my opinion, decision to make. And not, you know, just bring it up for discussion, but.
Right, I agree with that. I think the day-to-day decisions about certain things are in the charter and set forth. It's the responsibility of the town administrator. A decision like this falls under the statutory responsibilities that the Board of Selectmen have.
Anything else?
Could you bring this topic up at the next meeting, please, have it on the agenda?
It won't be on Wednesday's agenda, but if we have a meeting on Thursday, it could be on Thursday's agenda. We just posted Wednesday.
What day is it?
Today, we had to post it by 5. Sorry?
We don't really have to consider this until we enter phase 2 of phase 2.
Step 2 of phase 2.
No, well, no, they do, the leagues can, phase 1, they can, I thought, go out and do what you were saying. They have to, sanitize equipment, they have to stay so many feet away, that's phase 2, but just saying that, that's what I read, I read that what the government put out, but I may have got the dates wrong.
We're still in the passive.
So this is phase, so nothing happens for youth sports until phase,
Step
2,
2 of
step
phase 2.
2.
Which will be limited organized youth and adult amateur schools.
Sporting events, yes.
Presently,
Okay, thank you.
with this order.
Yeah, that's the one that was on the,
The reason why there's so much paperwork is so everybody kind of understands the way that we've been reacting to this on the municipal level. The governor, like on Saturday, will make an announcement and say, okay, we're entering phase 2. There's already a hierarchy of what's allowed under phase 2. But then the respective state departments that kind of control those sectors. So let's take the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs. They deal with the outdoor recreational activities. So you can do X, Y, Z, but then you have to drill down further in additional documents that provide guidance and specific clarification. So you start broad and then you get narrow, and that's what the staff events are kind of doing, is digesting. And then you find
Then you find
contradictory language.
right, and then you find a June 4th memorandum from EA. Okay. Okay, so it says no scrimmaging. And games are permitted during phase 2 only for non-contact sports where ordinary play allows for social distancing, tennis and other racket sports, for example. Inter-team games or tournaments are not allowed.
Gotcha. Could you just tell me what this is, phase 2 for this, and I'll be all set?
Sorry, which year?
What does it say, phase 2,
Approval process.
for this to start? I mean, not phase 2, but phase 2, step 2.
Okay, so here's the sequence of orders. This is 38 that came after 37, which is phase 2. So you're asking for the steps.
Well, yeah, step 1, I thought, and I may have read it wrong, that they could get out on the field, organized leagues could get on the field, and they could, which is almost impossible to do, but be able to, have everybody separated, 6 feet hour, you gotta clean the equipment. And then step 2 would be possible game type scenarios, but, it was first like a drills for step 1, and maybe step 3.
That actually might be, descriptions for the children's recreational teams.
Okay.
They do have sports teams.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You can't publish stuff because people are gonna be so confused.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we also struggle with how do we communicate these decisions to the public and what we're using. It's very, without, like, Jeff is here, so thankfully he's here, here's the conversation, he can distill that down, and he can effectively communicate. How do you put that on social media?
I know, I mean, you can catch the ball with your right hand, but you can't throw it with your left.
Right.
That's right. The law, they contradict themselves all the way through.
And every year, like, for example, late last week, I received a message from a city councilor in North Adams asking me if, why did North Adams shut down their basketball courts, but Adams left ours open? We didn't leave ours open. Under our emergency declaration that we had, we decided to shut down every facility that we had. The only difference was I don't think we took down our hoops. North Adams did.
Just like the tax sales, that people are calling me about townwide tax sales, and I said, no, it's not happening. Well, can we have individual? Well, if you can have individual tax sales, we can have the townwide tax sale, one hand washes the other here.
So some municipalities do have, regulations or bylaws or ordinances regarding head sales. Some require a permit. So the general aspect, the guys from EPA said that you treat it like retail establishment. So as of, today, retail stores were able to open with limited access, inside. So before that, the topic they come up during our teleconferences, we treat it like, curbside. So people were allowed to go outside, they would have to shop in the streets.
However, we voted as a board, to do away with tag sales at this time, including the townwide tag sales. So there are no tag sales permitted in the town of Adams. So that falls under the purview of the Board of Selectmen. So we made that vote on Wednesday. My apologies if I did not communicate that to you, prior to just right now.
Okay.
So that's where we're at. While we are still in a pandemic, we are not allowing tag sales.
Okay.
But like Mark said, the permits, I think maybe we should make a statement out there saying, when I call town hall to get a permit for a tag sale, that way they don't have to pay for it, just get a piece of paper saying, okay, you're having a tag sale here, that way they're allowed to have the tag sale, instead of getting 1,000 questions, can I have one, can I have one, can I have one? When the time comes, call Kelly Race and say,
That's what they're supposed to do.
In the town clerk, you are supposed to get a permit to have a tag sale.
oh, you do, I've never had one, so I don't know.
And usually when we do the town-wide, we reduce it,
$2.
Okay,
Right, right.
From $2 to 1.
right.
Yeah. It's a $2 permit fee.
But, yeah, okay. Well, I think we should make that known, we'll about make it $1 million.
Yep.
Things on Facebook and telephone calls and, just.
Yeah, it might not be a bad idea to run it on access cable to Adams. Have no town, no tax bills in the town.
I got 3 messages today in the town wide. And then I got messages again about tax. Sorry.
I will ask the town clerk to at least put something at a minimum on the town website, that indicates that.
Just so people, that's what I'm telling them, just call town hall and they'll tell you if you're able to have them, when you're able to have them.
All right. We'll move on to the interim police chief search process. As you all know, Chief Tarsa had given us his...
Robert, before you go. I just want to call him.
Oh, okay. Can you step out?
Yep.
Thanks. So on January 5th, Chief Tarsa did give us his notice, gave us 6 months notice, that he would like to retire, after 36 years of service to the police department. We have done our best to, allow, the chief to retire on his terms, and honor his original date of June 30th. We attempted to go forward with a full search process. This board had put forward a committee, a screening committee, and then COVID hit. So a couple of weeks ago, this board discussed kind of what to do in order to allow the chief to continue with his retirement date, although I think that he's moved it by a couple of weeks into mid-July at this point. But the board had decided to go with an interim chief for no more than 6 months to get us maybe through December, and allow us to then do a full open process with public input in a couple of months. So the position was posted immediately following that meeting. The deadline for applications closed on Thursday, this past Thursday, which I think was June 4th, if I'm not mistaken. I can look at the posting, Thursday, June 4th. I personally photocopied all of the applications and put them in your mailboxes the evening of the 4th and emailed you that they were there, and for your review. We received 6 applications for the interim police chief position, and this evening we can move forward in the process and identify some individuals that we would like to interview. These would be public interviews, and I have put it on the agenda for as early as this Wednesday evening to begin that interview process so that we can stay on target, which is all what we discussed 2 weeks ago when I mentioned that this would be an aggressive timeline to make sure that we are still on target to bring somebody on as early as July. I will, for full disclosure, one of the candidates who's in the pool is on the phone. He did identify himself at the start of this call, but I just wanted to make sure that you're all aware of who's on the call. The other person on the call is legal counsel. So just I can see that on the screen, but you all can't. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew who's still with us. Is Dr.
Sure, you can't divulge who the person is?
He identified himself as Sean Coyne.
Okay, then.
Coyne. Yep.
Feel like,
I thought
I was wondering who that was. I thought it was a restaurateur.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Boyne. Sorry, Sean. I have that.
Oh, that's okay, thank you.
Apologize. Okay. So open it up for discussion. If there's...
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure, Joe.
We're talking interim. When do you think that, we're going to, what is your goal for a full-time chief? What's the timeline? Interim, meaning what?
So we said no more than 6 months, so that would bring us to December, with a full-time starting January 1st, unless we were able to, get the process going sooner than that. But that gives us time to get the public process started again.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because, looking at the, people that, put in for the interim, I was quite surprised with the breadth of the number and their qualifications, so I think it's important that interim is made known that December is our target goal, but if we're able to get things moving a little bit quicker, it may be before that. Is that a fair assumption?
It is, and,
Okay.
I know that the town administrator has also talked to Labor Council about this, that, anybody who is serving in the interim position would also be eligible to apply for the full chief position and be able to, move forward in that public process.
Okay, so that's news to me. So the person that we, choose for interim can
Still
throw
eligible.
his head into the ring for the full-time
Yeah.
position.
Yep, and, I believe,
That's neat.
most, if not
Yeah.
all of these applicants had submitted for the full-time chief position when it was first posted. They were all communicated with, after this board decided to go with an interim search, and they were then, told that they could apply for the interim as well. And during that period of time, I know that you've spoken with Labor Council, and I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add, or if I
Just that,
stated that correctly.
no, just that we've run the entire process through Labor Council. We've made sure our Ts are crossed, Is dotted, and, this was the best course of action. And yes, anyone who applies for interim and anyone who may be awarded the position is open to go through the full process.
And the reason I ask is because when we choose an interim and all of them want to, the full-time position, the person that we choose for interim, in my opinion, gives himself a leg up for the process. So I wasn't aware, I don't know if I didn't hear about that, but that puts us in a tough situation because it's, you pick an interim and then it's pretty tough to, go for others.
Go ahead, Rick.
I think it's actually a little like flipping a coin. It may give them a leg up, but then again, after doing the job for 3 to 6 months or whatever, it may kind of squash their,
Yeah.
I got a question,
Sure, John.
Madam Chair. Did you mention that we're going to identify the 6 individuals this evening?
We can identify the individuals we'd like to interview.
Okay.
If the board would like to interview all 6, we can do that, and we can start as early as this Wednesday with interviews and then schedule them
Okay.
out after that.
Do all these individuals know that their names may be discussed and put in the Berkshires or whatever? Do they realize that can happen? Because normally, you get a final 3, you have a committee, and then they, bring forward 3 names, and they know the name's gonna be in the public eye.
They are aware
Do these
that,
6 know that?
they are aware that there is a public process. I think that's why we have one candidate who is on the phone with us, aware of the public process. Immediately following this meeting, I am going to call all of the, candidates and let them know what the next steps are and if they will be interviewed and schedule that accordingly. And definitely let them know that their names will now be public.
Thank you.
Yes.
Some of these individuals have current employment,
They do have current employment.
right, and I'm not sure. But if they're aware that their name's gonna be made public today, then fine.
And that is also what has been, checked with Labor Council and our own legal counsel about, this process, and that it needed to be done in a public meeting, could not be done in executive session, et cetera, so.
So have these 6 individuals last time been told that their names will be made public? To be made public?
I don't know if they were
5 minutes.
specifically told that their names would be made public immediately, but they were told that there would be a public process.
I can tell you the two of them, no, because two of them called out to my office prior to applying, inquired about the nuances of the job, and I informed them that the interim position was a public process. They would be hired by the Board of Selectmen, and they would be interviewed publicly, so at least two of them are aware. Because I had personally answered questions that they had prior to application.
Question from the media, who's going to, put the names out?
I seriously doubt I would put, until it got really specific, I don't think I would put any names.
Okay.
Tonight, there's no reason, 6 names is a lot, nobody's really interested in, unless you decided on 3 tonight, I think then it's, here are the 3, but otherwise, I would leave it alone.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. That makes you feel better when the media tells you. Thanks, Jeff. Sometimes nice knowing that you were in the seat once.
I don't know now. God bless you all, God bless you all.
That's enough of that joke. So really, it's up to the board to decide if you wanted to interview 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we can schedule them accordingly. I would like to limit them to an hour. I know that we have some questions that have been given to us from the city of North Adams that they had used during their process of search for their chief, that I believe Jay's been looking through. And we can certainly put together some questions using that and any of the questions I think that we used for our DPW search, our town administrator search, like.
I have 3 sources of questions.
Mm-hmm.
I have questions that the North Adams process used, which was a very open process that we have wanted to model because we felt it was very successful. The feedback that we got from those members of the community that it was a good process. I have those questions. I have questions that were submitted by Captain Newton of the Greenfield, formerly of the Greenfield Police Department, who is scheduled to be our representative on the search committee with police experience, chief experience. I have some questions that he had drafted for us in anticipation of the process. And I also have some questions that were submitted by our friends at the NAACP for addressing some of those concerns that they had when we went through with the hiring process. So we have enough, and once I understand what the board's wishes are to go forward with the interview process, I will assemble those questions for you. And of course, the members are always welcome to ask any questions of the candidates that they want, as long as they're asked of each candidate.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to invite all 6 of the applicants for an interview. Having looked and read their resumes, they all seem highly qualified, and I think that, you know, they're interested, and I don't think 6 is way too many. So I think it's something that we can do comfortably, and so if they're interested, I'd like to make a motion to interview all of the 6 applicants for the interim police chief in the town of Adams.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I suggest we spread it out.
Yeah, yep, that'll be the next thing that we talk about. There are a number, from a logistical standpoint, there are candidates here from all over the place, not just here in Berkshire County. I think for consistency purposes, I'd like to schedule these all as phone interviews, if we could, just so that everybody is on the same level playing field. So that's just something to consider, and we can certainly vote on that separately, but I wanted to bring it up as part of the discussion about inviting 6 candidates for an interview. I'll let you think about that.
Madam Chair, I think logistically it's a good idea, but when I interview somebody for an important job, I like to look at them and check their mannerisms, and you can tell a lot from a person when they're in front of you, but logistically and geographically, they're from, you know, some distance particularly one from Indiana and things like that, so.
And I think that we could even have a second interview and bring somebody in person before we make the selection. I think that that would be a reasonable request and give somebody a little bit more time, because we'd probably do that early next week at the earliest. But if we're gonna start interviews this week, like I just wanna make sure everyone's on the same level playing field, because we have, I think, 3 of them from out of state.
One from Indiana, 2 from Connecticut, 3 are from in the Commonwealth.
Right.
In the county. In the county.
In kind, yeah.
We can probably do 6 through the telephone, but
And then we can
if
narrow
we
down.
narrow it down to 3 or whatever, I sure not want to be face-to-face.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, body language speaks a lot.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense.
I would personally like to interview all of them, you know, with the option of a phone interview, because the person in Indiana, actually, you know, a phone interview in the individual's Connecticut, that's best for them. Then they can be able to do a phone interview, but I would like to invite them here for an interview. If they're going to be our police, intern police chief for 6 months, it's, again, just one person's opinion.
I concur with that.
Body language.
It could be video also.
Any means that works for them.
I just know being on the other end, and on the job search end, it's nice when everybody's on the same level playing field, and that's why I brought it up, that nobody feels like they didn't get, or that somebody got an advantage because they were local versus somebody further away. That's why I bring it up as a fair
Yeah, which
process.
they all have the opportunity to be here. But an individual from Indiana, understandably, a phone interview or a video conference may work better. Zoom, right, that we've been using, may work best for, it may work best for the Connecticut. It's almost like, you know, having a Zoom conference, if the person's talking to you, that's fine. You know, it's almost like the person being here, right, Connecticut, in my opinion. So I think it's fair that they have an opportunity to be here, but it's not unreasonable to have a Zoom conference.
I'll figure out those logistics. So we have a motion and a second to interview all 6 candidates. If there's not any other discussion, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. So as far as the schedule goes, we have posted that we would, start with interviews this Wednesday, as part of our meeting, probably with the first one at 5:30, because there were, I think, 3 items of business that we had to take care of for the 5 o'clock meeting start time. But would you all be available Thursday and Friday evening to do interviews this week?
I will be.
Yep, I will.
Okay. So if we did 2 a night?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm going to go for an ultrasound, I will tomorrow morning, so.
I'll be right back, you do.
Okay.
Preferably not all at 5 o'clock though. I'm on my work cycle.
Okay. So what would work best for you? 'Cause
6 o'clock
Wednesday,
would be fine.
okay.
It just,
So Wednesday, we're going to start a meeting at 5.
right.
We could take a break and do an interview at 6 if you weren't able to get here for 5. I could do a 6 o'clock interview, so you might just miss a couple of business items.
I should be able, I
Okay.
actually put in for vacation night and, but I haven't heard back yet.
Okay. So Thursday at 6 p.m. would be best for you.
It would.
Is 6 p.m. on Thursday okay for everyone else? I know that you'll let us know. Okay. Okay. And then on Friday, 6 p.m. on a Friday, sounds like a good time.
Anytime you want to do it.
You have the day off, but you're still on.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim. Okay. So 6 p.m. on Friday. Okay. So I will try to schedule those accordingly, and I will do that immediately following this meeting. And then as far as questions, would you like the town administrator to help draft some questions that you could select from?
I think it's always a good thing to have questions, inputs, but as the town administrator indicated, we can also ask our own, but
Correct.
we should probably submit the ones we're going to ask, right, so we don't.
so that we have the
cross
same
over each other.
questions. Yeah,
So will it be the similar format, 3 questions?
I think
Or
we're
2
probably 2 questions.
Okay.
I say we're,
I'll draft enough, so each member has 2 questions from the pool.
Well, I plan on making my own. I like doing that, I guess.
yeah, will you be able to submit your questions
Yeah.
by the end of the day tomorrow? Just
By
to
the
make
end
sure
of
that
the
the,
day tomorrow.
yeah, just so that the, themes,
Yeah.
are known, I guess. And then this way, Jay could distribute some questions for our consideration on Wednesday and include your questions in that.
So
And just identify
by the
if
end of
there's,
the day,
I say by the end of the day tomorrow.
We have to make sure we hit some, even as an interim, we're coming up on some challenging times that we need to make sure even the intern chief has some skills that we need. So, that's the types of questions I'll be focusing, budgetary questions, leadership questions, et cetera.
Anything else on that? Okay. All right. It's not on here, but is there anything for the good of the order? For us to,
Also,
okay. If there's nothing else, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Jim, do we have a second? Second by Rick. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you very much.
Jim.
Sean, I'll be calling you soon.
I don't know what you're going through, but I hope your ultrasound, what you're